shocking moment revealed, rancher's unexpected act transforms a life on the Wild West frontier. The dry air hung heavy around Jack Thompson as he surveyed his crumbling ranch under the vast Montana sky. An early wildfire had already blackened the brush nearby, a furious reminder of the chaos threatening to consume everything he had ever known. The weight of his family's legacy bore down on him like the leaden clouds gathering in the distance, an impending storm about to unleash its fury. He felt trapped, a rancher whose dreams were swallowed by the grip of an economic downturn. His hands ached from the toil, fingers stained with hours of labor, yet he couldn't shake the gnawing feeling of failure. The land that had fed his ancestors now felt like an anchor dragging him into despair. And then came the call that turned his already tumultuous world upside down. Luke, his estranged son, just down the road, spiraling out of control as he battled demons born from disappointment and rebellion. Jack's heart twisted, resentment clashed with a flicker of hope. How could his boy have turned away from everything? In his mind, Luke was abandoning a legacy that was woven into their very flesh by leaving. He believed, Luke was casting aside the very essence of what it meant to be a Thompson. Just then, a gust of wind howled through the rafters, a precursor to the storm about to strike. Jack's thoughts spiraled. He was caught in an internal tempest. Should he reach out? Or would his attempt merely expose his frailty? The ranch felt alive with his indecision, the ground beneath him trembling as if anticipating a cataclysmic choice. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. A clap of thunder cracked through the sky like a gunshot, jolting Jack back to reality. A faint nagging persisted, urging him to consider the possibility of redemption, a father's need to reconnect amidst the wreckage of what they once shared. He imagined opening the old barn doors, embracing Luke like he hadn't in years. But the very thought of reuniting sparked a torrent of fear. What if he couldn't forgive the boy for disappointing him? Could they ever bridge the expanse that grew with every unreturned call, every lost holiday? Just when Jack envisioned hope, an unnerving opportunity breached the surface. An offer from a developer glimmered like a mirage, a chance to sell off parts of the ranch, to escape the relentless pressure that suffocated him. But what price would he pay for security? Lurking beneath the sparkle was the gnawing guilt, the thought of turning the land into condominiums, transforming a legacy into a lifeless venture, an act of betrayal that could crush Luke even further. Each rumble of thunder mirrored the turbulence inside his heart, echoing the conflict threatening to tear everything apart. The winds howled, and Jack steadied himself against the wall, breath coming fast, his muscles tense with uncertainty. This was the precipice, the razor's edge of duty and desire. He clenched his fists, staring out into the darkening skies, wondering if he had the strength to carve out a future from the ashes or if he would be swallowed by the storm, lost within the echoes of a history that weighed heavier with each passing moment. Could he save not just the land, but the son he once feared he'd lost forever? Time ticked forward, each second stretching like the grasp of hope, and Jack stood poised before decisions that could shatter their world even further, insistent that something had to give. The storm finally unleashed, the skies splitting open to reveal torrents of rain that swept across the land, cascading off the barn roof like a deluge determined to drown Jack's anguish. As the ground soaked up the downpour, he felt the earth's pulse, a living entity aligned with his own turmoil. Each raindrop felt like a memory resurfacing, laughter shared, tales by the fire, the lessons taught under the wide Montana sky. But those reminiscences morphed into shadows, showing only the distance that had grown between him and Luke. Jack stepped out into the rain, drenched almost instantly. The cold hit hard, forcing him to think. How had it come to this? He had dreams, once vibrant and alive, visions of raising Luke amidst the grace of rugged terrain and endless horizons. Instead, he found himself wrestling with scars born from anger and betrayal. He was a father standing on the precipice, staring into the void created by a chasm of silence. The persistent drone of the rain whispered a truth he had tried to ignore: he needed to break the cycle. The thought of selling the ranch, tainted by both desperation and clarity, resembled a noose tightening around his heart. He knew Luke deserved a chance to understand the land and its legacy. Could a fragmented relationship be mended over a desire to surrender everything? Jack moved with purpose, driven by a newfound determination. The barn door, representing boundaries both physical and emotional, loomed before him like an old foe. Every passing second tightened the knot in his gut, fear battling courage as he reached for the handle, knowing that each act required more than mere physicality. It demanded vulnerability, honesty, and courage to confront the truth of their shared past. Swinging the door open, he was greeted by the scent of hay and old wood, a fresh haven against the disarray of his thoughts. It was time to confront Luke, even if it meant decoding the complexities of their strained relationship. Jack couldn't afford to let resentment dictate his actions any longer. As he walked to the adjoining fields, the rain softened, an ephemeral silence enveloping him. The instinct to reach out to his son swelled in his chest, loud and insistent, yet the shadows of doubt clung like the remnants of the storm. How could he hope to clear the air? What words could patch the rift that had formed? Jack clenched his jaw, resolved. The past was indeed a burden, but he was determined that failure would not define him. He could feel the stirrings of a latent strength he had set aside for too long. It was time to reclaim not just the land but the relationship he had so readily cast aside. And then, as he stepped forward, a distant figure emerged through the drizzle, growing clearer with each cautious stride. It was Luke, standing there drenched and vulnerable, shadowed by their unspoken history. This was the moment, a confrontation so achingly necessary that every heartbeat echoed with consequence. Jack knew they could no longer dance around the truth. The time had come for a reckoning. They would either forge a new path together or allow the storm to separate them forever. As they stood there, the air thick with anticipation, Jack felt the tremors of a choice waiting to be made, one that could reshape both their futures. Would this be the beginning of healing, or another opportunity squandered by fear? The answer hovered in the air between them, poised to deliver its fate. The rain continued to pelt down, each droplet carrying with it the weight of unresolved emotions. Jack's heart raced as he stood before Luke, the air between them charged with years of pent-up frustration and longing. They were two figures twisted together in the same storm, physically present yet emotionally worlds apart. Jack instinctively opened his mouth to speak, but words faltered at the threshold of his tongue. He could see the glistening droplets on Luke's brow, mirroring the turmoil in his own chest. Could he reach through the barrier of hurt? Instead of addressing the past, he opted for something simpler, something that felt instinctual. "Why are you here, Luke?" The question came out more strained than he intended, as if wrestling with the neon signs of desperation ingrained in it. "I thought you'd want to talk," Luke replied, his gaze unwavering. "Things can't just stay this way." There it was, the acknowledgement that had danced around them for too long. Jack's fingers flexed at his sides, a surge of both pride and regret coursing through him. This was the chance he had been longing for, yet the specter of failure loomed ever closer. He had to break the cycle. "Talking is a good start," Jack said, surprisingly calm. "But what if we try to do more than that? What if we actually figure out how to make this work?" Luke's expression flickered with both hope and skepticism. "You mean the ranch? You're not just gonna sell it?" "I've thought about it," he admitted, each word heavy with the gravity of his intention. "But I realize that this place represents more than a piece of land. It's our legacy, yours and mine. It's what I want to share with you. What I should have given you from the start." Jack's heart pounded as he registered the shift, the subtle scrunch of Luke's brow, the flicker of surprise. Could honesty be the bridge to healing? Could he embody the father figure Luke desperately needed? The realization felt like both a revelation and a dare. "I just don't want to be a burden to you," Luke said, vulnerability creeping into his voice. "I don't need a handout. You wouldn't be. This is about us reclaiming something together," Jack replied, his tone firm yet gentle. "You have every right to this ranch as much as I do. You know the land, you've felt it under your hands. That strength is ours. Luke stood rooted, the rain cascading around him like a curtain separating them from the past. Jack watched as traces of uncertainty melted into contemplation. Would Luke see the path he was offering? Would he perceive the chance for rebirth? As silence filled the space between them, Jack suddenly felt the urge to act. This wasn't just a conversation, it was an invitation to step outside their shadows of doubt. Let us walk the fields, Luke. Together, Jack suggested, his throat tight yet electric with anticipation. Let us reconnect with the soil, with the sky. Let us find the way back to each other by grounding ourselves to this land. Luke hesitated, weighing the enormity of Jack's offer. Dialogue had remained stagnant for too long, perhaps action could forge the path they both yearned for. And so, as they took their first steps across the saturated earth, Jack felt a pulse in his chest that mirrored the rhythm of life around them. It was a tentative beginning, a summons to both men to face the shadows that had trapped them. Yet, even as rain-soaked boots pressed into the fertile soil, Jack couldn't shake a lingering doubt. What if this was just another illusion of integrity, one more cycle set to break if they lost their footing? The land whispered around them, the trees swayed, and Jack understood the journey was far from over. There was much left unspoken, and the shadows of their shared history still hovered. They would have to confront those ghosts head-on. As they trudged deeper into the fields, Jack felt the weight of the invisible threads weaving between them, a tapestry of connection laced with discord. He was ready to push forward into the heart of their truths, but doubt still curled at his edges. What awaited them in the depths of this reckoning? The answer loomed ahead, tantalizingly out of reach, waiting to see if father and son were ready to grasp it. The rhythmic squelch of mud beneath their boots punctuated the stillness, a contrast to the torrential rain that hammered the landscape. Jack led the way, each step resonating with a mix of trepidation and resolve. This moment felt like the turning point, yet uncertainty gnawed at his insides. Reaching the edge of the field, he glanced back at Luke, whose expression was a tapestry of apprehension and curiosity. What now? Luke asked, his voice barely rising above the patter of rain, a vulnerability weaving through his tone. Jack hesitated, scanning the horizon where dark clouds still lingered. We need to confront what has been left unsaid, he replied, gripping his own resolve tighter. This land means something to us, but so do the words we avoid. What have you wished we could have shared? Luke's brow furrowed, his shoulders rigid in the dampness. It's complicated. You've kept me at a distance since I can remember. The admission hung heavy in the air, and Jack couldn't ignore the sting of truth laced within. I know, Jack said, the weight of his failures crashing back on him like the waves of rain. And I've let fear dictate my actions. But I'm here now. Let us start from scratch. With each word, Jack felt a flicker of empowerment. He understood that his journey wasn't just about reclaiming the ranch, it was about mending the fracture between them. Luke shifted his weight from one foot to the other, processing the offer set before him. What if I'm not ready? Luke's gaze faltered, focusing instead on the muddy ground, tracing lines like the very paths of their complicated history. That's okay, Jack reassured him, taking a step forward. No one knows the right time for a transition. All we can do is try. In this moment, he realized that vulnerability was a strength, not a weakness. Speaking his fears aloud somehow made them lighter. Try. Luke echoed, skepticism furrowing deeper into his features. What if it just hurts worse? Then we'll deal with it together. The resolve in Jack's voice surprised even him. For too long, avoidance had dominated his decisions. He had to break the cycle and lean into this shared pain. Jack motioned towards the nearby barn, its wooden doors creaking slightly under the weight of the downpour. Let us go inside. We can take shelter and talk. No more hiding. Luke nodded, albeit hesitantly, as they made their way under the protective eaves. Safeguarded from the storm, Jack felt a surge of possibility. The barn was more than a structure, it represented potential, a safe haven where they could let their defenses down. Once inside, Jack leaned against a wooden post, letting the silence linger for a moment. The rain's cadence softened, creating a symphony that resonated with a shifting atmosphere. This is our sanctuary, a place where we can explore our truth without distractions. Luke crossed his arms, a defensive gesture that didn't go unnoticed. Jack considered this seriously. Each barrier was a reflection of the unease that had festered between them. Maybe I thought I had to go it alone, Luke finally said, his voice low but firm. But the more distance I felt, the more I realized I needed to figure out my own identity. Jack swallowed hard, recognizing his role in that distance. You shouldn't have had to do that alone. You needed me there, but I was too blinded by my own fears. Silence cloaked them again, but this time it felt different. The air thickened with anticipation, and Jack braced himself. There's something I've been meaning to say, Luke started, his voice shaky. All those years, I wanted to understand my place here, not just on this land, but in your life. The revelation struck at Jack's core, laying bare the pain both had experienced. Tell me more, Jack urged, desperate and ready to engage in the rawness of their history. Luke exhaled, visibly wrestling with his emotions as he prepared to unveil layers he'd kept buried too long. The barn echoed with their charged vulnerability, and Jack felt his pulse quicken. What would Luke reveal next? As he stood on the precipice of their shared admission, Jack sensed that the truth, however grim, could carve a way forward. The moment felt electric, bursting with potential. Would it heal them or cut deeper? The answer unfolded like a flower, waiting for the light. Am they ready to transform this pain into catalyst for growth? Luke took a deep breath, and Jack noticed the tremor in his hands. I've always felt like I was living in your shadow, he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. Every time I tried to step into the light, it felt like you were right there, dimming it. Jack felt the accusation strike like a whip, igniting an internal struggle. He had been so focused on his fears and failures that he had failed to see how his actions affected Luke. I didn't mean to overshadow you. I was just trying to keep everything together. Together? Luke scoffed, a flash of anger breaking through his vulnerability. You meant to hold on to something that was slipping away. We never talked about anything that mattered. You turned us into strangers. As Luke's words sunk in, Jack grappled with the truth that had evaded him for years. I thought I was protecting you. Keeping you from making the mistakes I made. By pushing me away. Luke shot back. If I had made mistakes, they would have been mine to own, just like this ranch is now ours to save, together. If that's what you really want. Jack shifted his weight, the gravity of their situation becoming more apparent. They stood amidst the remnants of a home once vibrant, now facing the threat of disrepair, much like their relationship. You're right. I didn't want to let you get hurt, but in doing so, I hurt you worse. The rain drummed harder against the barn roof, as if it too urged them to confront their truth. Jack understood now that vulnerability was the bridge he needed to cross. But I'm ready to learn from that. I want to collaborate, to make this a partnership if you'll have me. Luke's expression softened but remained guarded. How can I know it's real? How can I be sure it isn't just empty words? Jack straightened, a sense of urgency propelling his next thoughts. Let's create an honest plan. I want us to set goals, both for the ranch and for ourselves. He stepped closer, the distance between them feeling both infinite and trivial. I want this land to reflect who we are together. Hope flickered within Jack, illuminating something deep inside him, potential that had long been dormant. We need to communicate. Regularly. What are your thoughts on how we should begin? Luke considered this, the tension in his shoulders lessening. We could start with the basics, chores, routines. Maybe even some time set aside for conversation. Just you and me. A thrill ran through Jack at the thought. He was tired of avoiding hard topics. Let us also include what matters to each of us, our dreams, our fears. We can't build a future if we're not honest about the past. As Luke nodded slowly, acceptance began to replace the apprehension in his eyes. I can agree to that. But trust won't happen overnight. Then let us work for it, Jack said, feeling a flicker of hope ignite. Every day, brick by brick, we can break down those walls. The moment stretched before them, charged with unspoken challenges and opportunities. Jack felt a cocktail of emotions surge inside him: fear, anticipation, and the bittersweet sting of regret. But it was becoming clearer, this was not just about the ranch. It was about reclaiming their lives, their identities, and above all, their bond. Let us make a list, then, Luke suggested, pulling a weather-worn notebook from his pocket. We can each jot down what we want to achieve, not just with the ranch, but personally too. Jack watched as Luke's handwriting flowed across the page, revealing a shift from doubt to determination. In that small act, a window opened, and Jack found himself inspired. Perhaps each note would reflect their truths, a tangible path guiding them toward healing, but as they proceeded, the barn door creaked ominously, a reminder of the fleeting nature of time. Would they be prepared for the challenges that lay ahead? The moments of conflict, the differences still unresolved, and the specters of their past haunted Jack's thoughts. As Luke offered the notebook to him, Jack felt the weight of accountability rest in his hands. What would he write that could capture the essence of their commitment? Could they truly turn this pain into a catalyst for growth? Clutching the pen, Jack took a deep breath, suppressing a flood of doubt. Could he rise to the occasion when it mattered most? What if his attempts to mend things led only to deeper fractures? The moment of truth loomed, and Jack's heart raced as he prepared to pen down his own aspirations, unearthing dreams buried long ago. Would he be bold enough to embrace the realities of personal development, or would fear still dictate his decisions? As he began to write, the storm outside seemed to mirror the tumult within. The narrative was just beginning to unfold, but he knew that whatever came next would demand every ounce of strength he could muster. As Jack's pen hovered over the paper, he felt an overwhelming sense of purpose surge through him. After so many years of standing at the periphery of both his life and his relationships, this was his moment to step forward, to claim ownership of his journey. The emotions intertwined with the ink on the page, they felt visceral and real. What did he want? He searched for his truth, the words resonating like an ancient melody in his mind that he could write about saving the ranch, securing their legacy. But beneath that lay deeper yearnings. He yearned for understanding, for connection, not just with Luke but with himself. He had lived in chaos for too long, steering clear of discomfort and treating intimacy like a threat. How many dreams were left untold beneath that fear? If they were to rebuild their lives, it had to start with honesty. The pen scratched against the paper, and he began cautiously, writing down a few staples, things that seemed innocuous on the surface. Create a sustainable plan for the ranch. A simple yet lofty goal, but deeper down he craved progression. Teach Luke the skills I've learned over the years. As he paused, another thought struck him like lightning. What if he included something that made Luke take a deeper look at what life could be, something beyond the land? Attend community workshops together. Each word felt like an unfolding layer of possibility. Luke might not see it yet, but this ranch was a gateway to ushering in their dreams. He looked up to see Luke's eyes fixed on him, waiting, expecting. Jack could feel the weight of his brother's hopes mingling with his insecurities. It struck him, revealing his vulnerabilities wasn't just about laying bare his own struggles. It was about giving Luke the courage to confront his. What about personal aspirations? Luke prompted, lifting the corner of his mouth into an encouraging grin. You can't forget those. The tiniest flicker of doubt crept in again, the fear of judgment, of reluctance. Jack had always hidden his ambitions, but this was different. I want to learn how to communicate better, he admitted, feeling as though he was peeling back layers of armor he'd worn for too long. To really understand how to share what I feel, especially with you. A flicker of surprise crossed Luke's face, and Jack wondered if he shocked him into silence or if he struck a chord deep within. The silence became a companion as he wrote this revelation down, and as he did so a liberating warmth spread through him, an acknowledgement that he could be more, do more, but despite these moments of clarity, doubt festered. What if this vulnerability led to chaos, rather than growth? What if Luke didn't reciprocate or pushed back against his confessions? The thought churned in Jack's stomach, but he pushed it aside. For once, he needed to believe they could handle whatever came next. "I can do this," he whispered to himself, the pen scratching against the surface of the page as he committed to more goals. His mind began to race with newfound desires, a desire to confront the emotional disconnect, to face the shadows that had haunted their family. "Let us create a family history project," he wrote. Each revelation tied to stories past would bind them closer, weaving their narrative into something alive. With a mixture of exhilaration and trepidation, he handed the notebook back to Luke. "Your turn. What do you have?" Luke examined Jack's notes, nodding slowly, and Jack could read the gears turning in his brother's head. He was no longer just a passive observer, he was part of the collaboration they desperately needed. "All right," Luke said, the determination evident in his stance. "But remember, what we decide today isn't just on paper. This is about accountability." Jack felt a sharp jolt of recognition. This was a commitment, one that could either mend or fracture them further. Instinctively, they were entering into a pact that would necessitate trust, consistency, and perhaps the hardest part of all, vulnerability over time. With every choice they made together, they were letting the past inform their present while forging a future brimming with potential. Jack saw Luke's affirmation in the lines of the notebook. They were no longer just brothers struggling under the weight of expectation, they were partners, yet, underneath the encouraging words of the moment lay an inescapable tension as both men understood that this new venture would require them to confront their deepest fears head-on. They had mere words on a page now, but the real test was yet to come, and as if reading the storm's call for action once more, Jack asked the question that had been gnawing at him from within. "What if we fail? What if this doesn't lead us to where we hope?" Luke's gaze met his with equal parts challenge and resolve. "Then we figure it out together, just like we're supposed to." Outside, thunder rumbled in agreement, echoing the weight of their unspoken fears. The air hummed with uncertainty and potential, and Jack stood at the precipice, wondering if they could navigate this unknown territory. He couldn't shake the sense that revealing their truths was just the beginning. What challenge lay lurking in the shadows, preparing to confront them as soon as they dared to step into that uncharted light? The air crackled with tension as Jack and Luke faced each other, the lingering echo of their commitments hanging heavier than the storm clouds overhead. Jack's mind raced, teetering between hope and fear. They weren't just drafting aspirations, they were forging armor to confront the past. What would their first step be? And could their newfound alliance withstand the truth that had plagued their family for years? "I think we should start with our family stories," Luke suggested, his tone imbued with enthusiasm. "It might help us understand why we've ended up here lost." Jack nodded, but unresolved doubts churned inside him. Sharing those stories would mean digging up wounds he tried to bury. Could he articulate the tangled emotions? He hoped that facing the ghosts of their past would illuminate a path forward rather than lead them deeper into discord. "Yeah, that could work," he replied, his voice hesitant. "What stories do you think we should tell first?" Without missing a beat, Luke launched into tales of their childhood fishing trips, muddy adventures across the ranch, and the laughter that danced between them like fireflies on warm summer nights. Jack smiled, momentarily swept back into the carefree remnants of youth. But something unsettled him in Luke's recounting. The memories felt shadowed, characters from their past only partially painted. Jack glanced at Luke, searching for more than just nostalgia in those bright recollections. This was their chance to mend the frayed edges of their relationship, to fill in the gaps left by silence. "What about the times when things weren't so fun?" he pressed, his heart pounding. "There were struggles. Mom and Dad, they weren't perfect." Luke's expression shifted, uncertainty flickering across his face. "You really want to go there?" "Yes," Jack asserted, feeling a wellspring of emotion rise. "It's part of our story. It's important." The weight of Jack's words settled into the room like a dark fog. Luke inhaled sharply before nodding. All right. But if we go down memory lane, we do it together. No holding back. As they moved through the memories, Jack felt the barriers he had built over years of avoidance beginning to crumble. Each painful recollection became a cathartic release, a step into the unknown that felt paradoxically liberating. They navigated turbulent moments, the breakdown of their parents' relationship, the harsh realities of running a ranch that teetered on the brink of collapse, and the unspoken grief that permeated their household. Jack realized they had both been holding the weight of their family's tragedy alone. The laughter of their youth was resilient but hollow without the context of their shared struggles. Why didn't we ever talk about this? Luke said, his voice cracking as he wrestled with emotion. I guess we just avoided it. Jack felt an awakening, a burst of realization that their fear of unraveling had kept them shackled. We didn't want to confront the truth, he said. But leaving it in the dark is just allowing it to fester. We should have talked about it then. We should still talk about it now. This conversation had become an unveiling of layers Jack hadn't anticipated. Sure, they were delving into painful territory, but under the weight of acknowledging their reality was a budding sense of strength, a promise of trust. Ever think we might been stronger together if we hadn't pushed each other away? Luke said quietly, his eyes reflecting the tumultuous storm outside, mirroring their internal chaos. Yeah, Jack confessed, feeling the weight of vulnerability lift off his shoulders. But it's never too late. We can change that. As evening descended and darkness cocooned the ranch, Jack felt an unfamiliar energy crackling around him. It was a realization that they weren't just aspiring to be better brothers but partners in a more profound journey. They had touched the edges of their history, and amidst the lightning that illuminated the night sky, Jack felt the unmistakable stir of transformation. But as they leaned into their conversation, the door creaked open, and a gust of wind swept through, carrying with it a chilling sense of foreboding. They both turned, feeling the impending tension shift in the air. What was that? Luke whispered, his bravado faltering. Let's check it out, Jack said, heart pounding with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Whatever was about to happen could add an entirely new layer to their rekindled relationship, a challenge that may redefine everything they were beginning to build. Stepping forward, they took one last look at each other, the determination in their shared gaze unbroken as they ventured into the uncertainty that awaited them. What awaited them in the shadows beyond that door could either bond them further or threaten to unravel everything they were slowly piecing together. Jack's heart raced as he crept toward the open door, the wind gusting around him like a palpable forewarning. Each step felt like a plunge into the unknown where shadows danced just beyond reach, teasing him with silent whispers of the family secrets they had yet to confront. What if it's nothing? Luke asked, his voice barely more than a murmur, the bravado from moments before fading like twilight. Nothing or everything, we can't ignore it, Jack replied, forcing a confidence he didn't fully feel, but there was a fire igniting within him, a flicker of courage fueled by their earlier revelations. They stepped outside, the chill of the evening enveloping them. The storm was closer now, the rumble of thunder reverberating like a heartbeat. What lay beyond their comfortable confines was a world that could either reaffirm their commitment to one another or tear apart the threads they had just begun to weave together. The yard lay in disarray, tools overturned, hay scattered across the ground, a reminder of the relentless chaos life had thrust upon them. But amidst the disarray, something caught Jack's eye, a flash of silver, tantalizingly out of place. Without thinking, he moved toward it, drawn as if it were a thread tugging at the fabric of his destiny. Jack, be careful, Luke warned, his tone shifting to one of caution. But Jack felt an urgency he couldn't explain. As he reached down, he grasped the handle of an old, beaten toolbox, resting incongruently among the detritus. The moment he lifted it, a wave of nostalgia crashed over him, forgotten memories from their childhood, moments spent fixing farm equipment while their father guided their hands, teaching lessons wrapped in mechanics and determination. What did you find? Luke's voice broke through Jack's reverie, bringing him back to the present moment. It's just a toolbox, Jack said, flipping it open. But as he did, something far more revealing than tools lay inside: crumpled letters, a dusty photograph that seemed to float toward the surface, and various objects that felt distinctly personal. Jack felt a pang in his chest as he carefully unfolded the photograph, a family portrait taken long before everything unraveled. The faces seemed to smile with innocence, but their eyes hinted at stories untold. He began to sift through the letters, each one dated back to a time when their parents seemed less fractured. "Jack, those are our parents' letters?" Luke asked, confusion etching his features. "It looks like it," Jack replied, his voice trembling as he read the words scrawled in elegant script. Notes of love mingled with worry, of dreams crushed yet tenderly clung to. Each letter peeled back layers of their parents' relationship, revealing the depths of their struggles, dreams deferred, and the complexities of love tested by hardship. "What are we even doing?" Luke said, dread creeping into his voice. "Digging up the past, it's only going to hurt more." Jack paused, doubt washed over him. Hadn't they just committed to confronting the ghosts of their lives? This was at the very core of their journey. With every letter, they confronted misconceptions they had held about their parents, even themselves. "No, this is how we do it. We learn." As they stood there, it became clear, each word was a conversation waiting to happen, an invitation to disclose the raw, hard truths that long-suppressed fears had silenced. They had remained apart for too long, but this moment was the catalyst needed to transform their fractured pieces into something whole again. "I can't unsee this," Luke admitted, the weight of uncertainty settling back onto his shoulders. "What if we find more than we're prepared to handle?" Jack gathered his resolve. "Then we face it together. The only way out of this is through it. We owe it to ourselves, to our family." They looked at each other, the tempestuous skies reflecting the tumult of emotions swirling within them. Outside pressures loomed large, but so did the burgeoning strength of their alliance. As they retreated into the house, toolbox in hand, Jack could feel the currents of change brewing within him. Heavy circumstances loomed, but buried in those letters was the potential for understanding, acceptance, and ultimately, forgiveness. Sitting down at the kitchen table, Jack stared at the scattered remnants of their history. As he opened one of the letters, a heavy silence filled the room, amplified by the storm now crashing around them that he could hardly breathe. A thrilling intensity electrified the air. What awaited in those words could redefine not just their relationship with their parents but forge their futures as brothers. Yet as they began to read together, another loud crash echoed from the barn, drawing their attention, threatening to unravel the fragile tapestry they were starting to weave, one that held their journey together. Jack's heart sank. What now? The night felt heavy with impending decisions. There was danger in the unknown, but perhaps even more peril in remaining in the dark about themselves and their family. The moment of truth loomed ahead. The crash echoed again, a jarring intrusion slicing through the fragile atmosphere they had created. Jack instinctively shot a glance at Luke, whose eyes mirrored his apprehension but also a spark of determination. Their hands released the letters momentarily, a shared understanding passing between them. They had entered unknown territory, and retreat was no longer an option. "What do you think it is?" Luke asked, breaking the silence that hummed with anticipation. Jack stood, shifting his weight, as the weight of the decision pressed down. "Whatever it is, we should check it out. This is part of confronting the past. We can't turn back now." Their resolve reinforced, they dashed toward the barn, the storm raging around them as if nature itself were responding to their tumultuous emotions. The barn door creaked ominously as they pushed it open, the gust of wind slapping at their faces like an unwelcome guest. Inside, the shadows danced unnaturally, and the smell of damp hay mixed with the metallic tang of tools scattered on the floor. Jack started to move cautiously further into the barn, heart thumping in his chest as they scanned the area for the source of the noise. His eyes caught sight of the overturned wheelbarrow, its contents strewn about like forgotten memories. But what struck him as he stepped closer was not just the chaos but a deeper realization this disarray mirrored their own lives. "Jack, look!" Luke's voice broke through the clutter of his thoughts as he pointed toward a figure hunched in the corner, hidden beneath a collection of old farm equipment. Who is it? Jack approached with increasing caution, heart racing not just from fear but from the bubbling curiosity. As they drew closer, it became clear, it was an old man, disheveled but familiar. "Grandpa?" Jack exclaimed, disbelief mingling with concern. Their grandfather, a man they hadn't seen in years, scarred by age and rough weather, but with an eye that flickered with life, looked up at them, surprise blurring the contours of his face. "Boys, I wasn't expecting. Just hunting for some tools." Luke stepped forward, skepticism painting his features. "Why are you here? You shouldn't be alone out here." The man's gaze flitted between them, a mixture of gratitude and regret dawning. "There's a lot to explain. I thought I could fix things, bring some stability back." "What do you mean?" Jack pressed, a tidal wave of emotions crashing into him. The memories of happier days with their grandfather melded with the stark reality of their present. "Your parents, their story didn't end as you think it did." His voice trembled slightly, heavy with old burdens. "There's a lot more you don't know. Secrets buried deeper than this barn." A rush of adrenaline propelled Jack forward, fueled by an insatiable need to uncover the truth. "What do you mean? What secrets?" Their grandfather paused, eyes shifting to the toolbox still in Jack's hand. "Those letters, they were just the beginning." He hesitated, the weight of the past tangible in the air. "You have to understand, what I hid was for your own good. But it's time to face it." Jack's heart raced, uncertainty brewing. "Face what? The past? The lies? Your family isn't just a story of love, it's tangled with despair and choices that we're ashamed of," the older man lamented, his voice thick with emotion. "But perhaps it's time you find out where you truly come from and what it can teach you about where you're going." The storm outside howled, as if mirroring the tempest within Jack. He had thought unearthing the truth through the letters would provide clarity. Instead, what loomed in front of him felt like a dark tunnel with no clear exit. "Why didn't you tell us sooner?" Luke demanded, frustration boiling just beneath the surface. "I thought I was protecting you," their grandfather replied, anguish surfacing in his tone. "But now I realize you're old enough to make your own choices that could determine the course of your lives." They stood in a silence thick with revelations yet to unfold. Jack felt the darkness of unanswered questions bear down on him, pressing against his resolve. Their family history had been one of painful truths, and now it threatened to collapse inwards. Jack's mind spun, revelations danced just out of reach. Each letter, each hidden truth, became the fabric of a greater narrative, one that could tear their family apart or bind them closer if they dared to unravel it. "What comes next?" Jack finally asked, his voice steady despite the whirlwind within. The answer was locked away in his grandfather's eyes, and as the winds howled outside, a new journey beckoned. But with it came the knowledge that they were not just unfolding their family's story, they were now entwined in a battle for understanding, healing, and ultimately, identity. The moment of truth had arrived. What awaited them on the other side of this truth could shatter everything they thought they knew or build them into something stronger than they could have imagined. As the rain continued to patter against the barn roof, Jack felt a sense of resolve coursing through him. They could confront their grandfather's revelations together, transforming buried secrets into opportunities for healing. The air crackled with the remains of their shared vulnerability, binding them, making their future seem brighter against the backdrop of uncertainty. "Let us hear it, Grandpa," Jack urged, the urgency in his voice cutting through the lingering storm outside. "What are these truths we need to know?" He felt a weight lift within him, replaced by a tangible excitement for the challenges that lay ahead. There was no turning back, their past had caught up with them, and perhaps it was time to break the cycle of avoidance. Jack's grandfather took a moment to gather his thoughts, the lines etched on his face softening with age-old wisdom. "Family carries both legacies and burdens," he began slowly. "What you are about to hear isn't easy, but understanding it can provide the foundation for your future." He gestured to the toolbox, its contents spilling over like the unfiltered emotions of their lineage. Luke took a half-step forward, eyes locked on their grandfather, his skepticism now replaced with curiosity. "You mean our family's history is more complicated than we ever realized?" he said, seeking clarity in the fog of uncertainty. "Much more," their grandfather affirmed, a flicker of regret flitting across his features. "Years ago, I made choices some wise, others deeply regrettable. I thought I was safeguarding you from hardship, but those choices created walls instead of bridges." Jack's heart raced. Each revelation could be a stepping stone toward understanding or a hurdle obscured by resentment. "What happened?" he pressed, feeling an urgent need to connect the dots of their fragmented existence. Their grandfather inhaled deeply, releasing a sigh heavy with memories. "Your parents struggled financially, emotionally. Their love was tested, they fought against the odds, but my inability to be there only strengthened their despair. I had my own demons." The weight of his words lingered in the air, inviting both acknowledgement and confrontation. "We felt it," Luke replied quietly, the lines of pain drawn in his brow smoothing out as he absorbed the truth. "But you could have told us. We could have fought together. You kept us in the dark." "I thought protecting you meant shielding you from the truth," their grandfather said defensively. "But that only hedged your ability to grow. You need to confront your own fears and failures, or they'll hold you hostage." The echoes of their grandfather's honesty swirled around them like the wind outside. Jack realized this was what he had wanted, to face the saturated truths and redeem what was left of their disjointed family narrative. "Then let us turn things around," he declared, a newfound confidence solidifying his intentions. "We can't change the past, but we can choose our future." Luke nodded, understanding the magnitude of the journey that lay ahead. "What if we joined together to restore the ranch?" His eyes sparkled with determination, as if rekindling a flame that had been snuffed out long ago. "To make it a representation of our resilience?" Their grandfather's eyes lit up, recognizing the resurgence of their family spirit. "That's it. Working as one is what will teach you the most. Each day you build together will be a day of reclaiming your heritage." With the weight of family legacy surrounding them, Jack took a bold step. "Let us also reconnect with the community. We can host workshops, share knowledge about agriculture, sustainability. We can build trust, restore both our land and our family ties." The visions flowed through him, vibrant and full of hope. He felt the tapestry of dreams begin to weave together, not just for him and Luke, but for the generations that would inherit what they chose to create today. "Absolutely," Luke replied, his voice firm. "This isn't just about saving the ranch, it's about shaping who we are meant to be together." Their grandfather beamed at them, the burdens of old dissipating as new possibilities filled the room. "Then you must treat this ranch like your own. Care for it fiercely, just as it will care for you. Speak, listen, and learn from each other. This is the journey you will shape together." An incredible sense of fulfillment swelled within Jack. The conflict had led to this moment not a conclusion, but a launch into real transformation. The truth they had unearthed demanded to be embraced, and with clarity, he felt propelled into a future ripe with opportunity. With mutual determination, Jack and Luke executed a plan that involved not just restoration of the land, but their own identities as part of the Thompson legacy. Together, they would mentor each other, sharing life lessons, confronting harsh emotions, exposing frailties, and celebrating successes. Weeks turned into months, but every goal, every workshop, and every conversation revitalized the ranch. It transformed into a rebirth, flourishing under their stewardship. Jack felt a soaring sense of confidence. He was more than a rancher, he had become a guide, a father, a brother invested in the well-being of the land and their evolving family ties. As the seasons passed, Jack earned recognition in the agricultural community, not just for successful practices, but for embodying resilience and accountability. People acknowledged the change he had manifested, not just in the ranch flourishing under his touch, but in the lives he had impacted. Jack Thompson, once paralyzed by fear and uncertainty, emerged as a figure of competence and kinship, standing firm upon the land that only a short while ago felt burdensome. He had turned an economic downturn into sustainable growth, not just as a rancher but as a leader in his community. Moreover, he had cultivated a relationship with Luke that was flourishing, a bond forged through honesty and collaboration, transforming their shared trauma into strength. Jack smiled as he looked over the landscape, no longer an anchor, but a canvas of possibilities. Each hill and crest resonated with laughter, stories shared, trials overcome, and the unbreakable connection established between father and son. This is just the beginning, Jack affirmed to himself, discerning the vibrant tapestry of their lives. He knew they would continue to encounter challenges, but they built a foundation strong enough to weather any storm. They chose growth together amidst the backdrop of their family's rich tapestry. The past was no longer a dark alley but a pathway to understanding, and he was ready to walk it every step of the way. You need to subscribe now if you want to be part of these transformative stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to help our algorithm rise. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Comment below your reactions and theories about what comes next.